Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining South Base Institute's Sustainability in Action, or SART as we like to call it, from competition to collaboration, balancing the natural, social, and built environments in a regenerative economy. I am Catherine Slocum-Samua, your host today. We are so glad you have joined us. If you're having technical difficulties, make sure to click on raise your hand icon on the left in the go-to webinar control panel. Next slide. Feel free to ask questions for the panelists at any time using the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen. The questions will be passed on to our moderator for the Q&A session later today. Next. You can use the hashtag SouthFaceSART on social media to connect with other SART attendees and share links to other upcoming sustainability events. Did you attend a SART in 2020 or 2021 and need continuing education credits from the American Institute of Architects? Email events@southface.org with your name, AIA number, and which SARTs you have attended, and we will get that to you. We know that many of you have missed the opportunity to connect with each other in person, so we will be hosting Zoom breakout conversations after this event. This should give you a chance to talk to other attendees about the panel, connect with new and old friends, and I will let you know when it's time to follow the link provided in the chat box or in the email that you received this morning. To kick us off, we will hear from one of our 2021 corporate donors. Please welcome George Buchanan from 2KB Energy Services and South Face board member. Welcome, George.
Hey, thank you, Catherine. Good morning, everyone. My name is George Buchanan, the founder and CEO of 2KB Energy Services. We are a Georgia-based energy management and sustainability consulting firm. We focus on the private sector, the public sector, and even the industrial market, sort of really working to bring sort of practical solutions to the built environment, right? Going beyond the set it and forget it approaches that we sometimes see, and making sure that really the people that are going to be involved in these retrofits, the policy and process, sort of the culture is affected to really sustain the energy savings that are developed, right? Our clients engage us when they've got limited funds for projects and they're really looking to maximize the value of their investments. They got really limited throughput, right? There's too many projects or a number of competing projects on the table, and they just really need some help and subject matter expertise in really knocking out these wish list projects, these sort of comprehensive, again, energy management projects and strategies. We are very much focused on sort of the elimination of waste in process optimization, again, energy efficiency. We come out of, our team of 8 folks come out of corporate America, where we really wanted to bring a small business touch to these big picture, big company solutions. Responsibility is sort of the name of the game for us, being really ethical and responsible about our business processes, our business practices and partnerships, which one of the reasons we support South Face, right? Again, I talked about the background in corporate America. The title of today's SART, from competition to collaboration, is really apropos for us, having this spotlight. Again, in corporate America, sometimes the implicit message, right? You kill the competition, eat their young. So here at South Face, right, there's collaboration with the entire community, including governments, NGOs, academia, other nonprofits. We support South Face because we feel like we've got very much a shared focus at both a broad and impactful level in the technologies, policy, workforce, and built environment. When I joined the board a little over a year ago, it was both an honor and a no-brainer for me. Sort of in my year service on the board, the backstage view into the dedication of all the South Facers has really been an inspiration to me and to our team. I encourage everyone here considering membership to go ahead and join Southface. Encourage everyone to continue to look for ways to support Southface and our work toward a regenerative economy. Catherine?
Thanks, George. Southway sponsors help us provide meaningful and relevant content. Reach out to me if you're interested in sponsoring or becoming a member. And now I'll hand it over to Shane Totten, Southface Institute's Director of Strategy and Impact. He will talk more about the importance of the regenerative economy and introduce our moderator. Welcome, Shane.
Good morning. Hey, everybody. I'm Shane Totten. I'm the Director of Impact and Strategy at Southface. For almost 43 years, Southface has been helping the marketplace evolve toward greater sustainability. Thank you for joining us today to learn more about a regenerative economy and how it can lift all people and communities while enhancing natural systems. You know, in contrast to a linear economy that thrives on the concept of take, make, use, and dispose, or a circular economy that's closed but has limited impact, a regenerative economy creates additional value over time. It creates greater capacity in the natural environment, the social environment, and within the built environment by increasing social, economic, and environmental potential without prioritizing one outcome over the other. For the next hour, our panelists will share with you their current work that reflects the potential of a regenerative economy in creating a truly sustainable future, and give you concrete examples of work today that's helping achieve and realize a regenerative economy. And I would like to take, as my niece would say, a fanboy moment and introduce Bill Reed. He is going to be our moderator today. When I was emerging into my career as an architect, I also led wilderness adventures as a guide. And I really thought about the conflict between the built environment and the natural environment, and how there had to be a better way for people and buildings to cohabitate with the rest of the planet. And that's driven my career. And Bill's work has inspired me that entire time. And I anticipate that today, each of you is going to be inspired not only by Bill, but by our other panelists. Bill is an internationally recognized planning consultant, design process facilitator, lecturer, teacher, and author in sustainability and regeneration. He is a principal of the Regenesis Group, a regenerative design, living systems integrator, and education organization. And I believe he's also a co-conspirator at another organization called the 7 Group. His work centers on creating a framework for managing an integrative whole and living systems design approach. He calls it regenerative development. And the objective of his work is to improve the overall quality of the planet, the physical, social, and spiritual life of our living spaces. The more immediate benefits of this process include higher efficiency, lower costs, reduced waste, faster time to market, and the realization of exponential value to the social, ecological, financial, and human qualities of a project, the community, and its ecosystem. As author of many technical articles and contributor to multiple books, including co-authorship of the Integrative Design Guide to Green Building. Bill, my copy's on my desk. If you happen to go through the office, if you could just sign it, I'd really appreciate that. He's a founding board of director member of the U.S. Green Building Council. He's one of the co-founders of the LEED Green Building Rating System, which reminds us a lot of the Earthcraft rating system. In addition to being considered one of the leading thinkers in this field, Bill has consulted over 200 green design commissions, buildings, and city master plans. He is also a keynote speaker at major building and design events, as well as a guest lecturer to universities throughout Europe, North America, and Oceania, including Harvard, MIT, Princeton, and UPenn. Bill, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Shane. Wow, that was sweet. And thank you all for being here. I've got 10 minutes to give you a perspective that the panelists will then be speaking into. So I'm going to be putting regeneration in context in as short order as I can. And let's see, how do the slides appear here? Can I see what? What's going on? There we are. Okay, next slide, please. So one of my mentors, Carol Sanford, has described 4 modern paradigms, and I think this may help us understand how regeneration fits within where we're typically working. So we'll start at the bottom, the extract value paradigm. I think we pretty well can intuit what that means. Basically, it's our right to dominate nature and to take from it what we will, or even take from other human beings what we will for our own benefit. The arrest disorder level is pretty much where the sustainability movement has been residing in the last 20, 30 years. Slow down the damage, if you will, and fix the imperfections that are out there. Then we jump up to the do good level, and that's a kind of a nuance. It's a nuanced one because do good sounds pretty good. How do we apply culturally accepted ideals out there? And therein lies the problem, because we can actually assert what we feel is the right idea on another culture, and it doesn't work out too well. So doing good can actually get us in trouble unless we're really paying attention to what the next level is about, evolve capability. And by that means read the text here, right? Whether with life sheds, not watersheds, life sheds, or people, every living entity asks that we approach each individual entity to reveal and support its unique potential. So just like a child, we want to actually lift up their potential, right? Same thing with a place. So when working, or any living organism, when working regeneratively, no standardized management practice or macroeconomic structure, I don't know what the bad English is, supports this. There's no one that supports this basic value. So regeneration is about understanding each living entity on their own terms and working with that. Next slide, please. So the definition of a regenerative economy, and by the way, regeneration applies to any living system, and an economy is a living system. We hope it is, for sure. Not an extract value system. Regenerative economies, and you can look at this as at projects too, seek to develop the inherent potential. And Shane mentioned that too, very elegantly. What's the potential we're working with? And we're going to actually talk about that towards the end of today as well. Seeks to develop the inherent potential in everyone and every living system they touch. This is how communities become regenerative. They build the capacity to become self-managing, self-investing, and self-evolving. Your projects or the problem solving emerge from this way of being in the world. Next slide. So many of you have seen this example. I use it all the time because it's one of our first projects that actually got somewhere, but it's also a small enough project that it's relatively easy to illustrate the thinking behind a regenerative attitude. So this is a grocery store in Brattleboro, Vermont, a cooperative community grocery store, and they asked if they wanted to be a LEED Gold grocery store. They were building a new store on this site, and the question that we asked everybody is, do you want LEED or do you want to be sustainable? Because there's two different things here. LEED actually is moving us towards sustainability, but it in itself does not create a sustainable condition. And they said that they gave a great answer. They wanted both. So we were off to the races. And what we did is we looked at the system that they were part of, the living system that they were part of. And next slide, please. So obviously this is a grocery store. So the system they were part of was a food system. And it became, within 5 minutes of research, we learned that the average bite of food in the United States travels 3,600 miles. And when we explored this with the executive committee, we walked through the grocery store, and the first produce bin that we came to, where it was an apple bin, and there were apples from New Zealand. So there you go. There's a lot more energy involved with that food system than just the building and the refrigeration cases. So this grocery store became an opportunity to engage with thinking about what is a sustainable food system. And we asked the question, what happens if there's a truckers strike? Well, they're out of business in 3 days, so it's not a sustainable grocery store. And they said, yes, and we're worried if Whole Foods comes into town because we'd be out of business in a year. So the one thing that Whole Foods or a truckers strike can't compete with is local food. And so this is why this map is there. These are all former farms that had been abandoned because of nutrient depletion in the soil, pollution, et cetera, and then an economy, a global economy that took these local businesses, put them out of business. So the best soil, however, was in downtown Brattleboro. And most towns used to feed themselves in their backyards during World War II, the Victory Gardens. So this grocery store was programmed to actually begin to teach people how to do their own gardening again and farming. And then a cannery to can their food that they were producing, and a daycare center to take care of the kids while the parents were doing that work, and an agricultural and soil extension service, not to just teach the people how to farm, but to begin to establish the talent for reestablishing farms, and a credit union to loan money to establish farms, and what more, an abattoir for hunters to dress their meat. Missing one here, but what it came, and a Forest Service extension service to begin the restoration process of the damaged watershed and life shed. So, and by the way, after all that, and a grocery store. Now, they didn't quite understand. We barreled ahead. We had not necessarily embraced the whole community in this understanding. And one guy said, "What is all this stuff? All we wanted was a grocery store." And we were let go. We were fired, if you will, after that, because we weren't giving them the grocery store they expected. So we realized we had a lot of damage control to do, and we wrote a report that they read, and for about a year. And we got a call about it from a year later. Next slide, please. From the president saying, "Bill, we want to apologize. We understand what this is about now. The building, while it is important, wasn't important as we thought. It really is about the system." And what they did is they developed a 100-year ends policy to engage all these ideas. And they're currently under operation to get there, to actually implement this thinking. Next, please. So not only were we working with a whole system, the food, the land, the farming, the community, we're working with nested systems because life is nested in systems. And so we add value. Shane talked about that. This is about adding value, additional value over time to these larger systems. So not only was the land being added value to and the community being added value to, the cooperative system actually became a value adding system where they were actually supporting other co-ops in the North New England region. So this is ultimately about a developmental process. It isn't about delivering a thing. The buildings emerge from this. This is about growing the capability of people to engage around larger roles and purpose, giving more meaning to life, actually. Next, please. So this is about regeneration. We're obviously working with a building organization and a community planning organization, South Face, and we're working with an economy. So what does this have to do with an economy? Well, interestingly enough, the word economy comes from the Greek word oikos, which stands for eco, or economy. The economy and ecology come out of that. And oikos is about the wise management of the household. And we call that genuine wealth, the health of the land, the health of the sheltering, the health of the food, the health of the family, all supports the polis, the city-state. So the community is actually integral to the idea of oikos, or wise management of the household. And there are a number of domains here. These are the 5 capitals from Forum for the Future: the land, the infrastructure, the social system, cultural system, human development, education, spirituality, and of course, financial is a kind of a vessel that holds all that. Next, please. One of the things that a household actually includes is an understanding of the larger system. So typically we work with a closed system. The business works with the customers. That's a closed system. But open system acknowledges there are other stakeholders involved, and we actually we acknowledge them and transact with them and give them benefits and understand their concerns. But a living system actually takes all those stakeholders and helps them understand that all of us are interested in the health of the system, and unites them and integrates them in service of the health of the socio-ecological system. Then we truly have a household, a healthy household, a living system. Next, please. So oikos, the household, supporting the polis, the city-state, actually is about working with the world place by place. Elinor Ostrom, the won the Nobel Prize in 2009 for economics, proved that the tragedy of the commons, Garrett Hardin's article from the 60s, is not operable in place. In other words, that if each place on the planet is a manageable system, a life shed, that we can actually see the effect of our impact, and we get feedback from that system. So we can't really heal the earth and save the earth. It's too big, it's too abstract. But what we can do is heal the earth place by place. And so this idea of oikos and household in the place that we live is actually how we most effectively work on saving the planet. Next, please. So regenerative development is, I want to make the distinction between generative actions and regenerative actions. We often call regeneration what we're doing in regenerative agriculture or biophilia or biomimicry. All those are really important, but those are about generating the first impulse for restoring the damage that we've caused. Regeneration is about a continual process of rebirth. How do we actually re-engage? Because things change. Do we have the capability in our community to stay in the game of evolution? And that means we actually have to develop a governing system or management system or relationship system where we are actually every year saying, how are we doing? And then improving that or changing what we might not be working so well. So regeneration, that RE is really important. Birth, life, death, rebirth. Birth, life, death, rebirth happens in a cycle. And regeneration is about staying in that cycle, that game of evolution. Next, please. So the final slide, I want to, and this is the best book on sustainability that's come out in the last 30 years. I highly recommend it, Sand Talk by Tyson Yunkaporta, Aboriginal Australian. So are we really talking about an economic system? Not really. Any economic system will work if we are emphasizing the relationship systems, how we actively care and how we extend that care. So a quote from his book, paraphrase, is whether with land or people, the most destructive idea in existence. I am greater than you, you are less than me. This is the source of all human suffering. And we can flip that so that the foundation of regenerative economy is us developing ourselves in service of the groups we're working with, in service of the system that we're trying to affect. Okay, that was a mouthful, but I am complete at the moment. And now we are on to our panels. Okay, next slide. Nope, we're done with that. There we go. So I'm going to introduce Carol Hunter, and I don't know Carol, she sounds pretty fascinating. Carol has over 20 years of executive leadership in nonprofit, broadcast, and entertainment management. 2011, Carol began as the Chief Administrative Officer at Truly Living Well, one of Atlanta's oldest and largest urban farms. She created an infrastructure that grew volunteerism from several hundred to over 4,000 people annually and secured over 1.2 million in grant funding. The organization increased its capacity to engage the community in developing local food systems through education, food production, and outreach by 62%. In 2018, Carol was named Executive Director. Carol, welcome. I don't think we can see Carol. Her video may not be working, but Carol, are you?
Yes,
there?
I am here.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Sure.
So happy to be able to join you all this morning. Imagine, if you will, a community in which food travels 0 miles from the farm to your table, where the dollars you spend for healthy food provide a livable wage for urban farmers who live in the same community, where people of all incomes can walk or bike or get fresh food at their community farmers market, where children are learning to value healthy food and continue the tradition of growing and eating locally. Imagine, if you will, a community in which tons of natural waste are diverted from these tables to landfills, where farmers create the richest, most nutrient-dense soil on the planet. This soil provides nourishment to grow over 35,000 pounds of healthy food right in that community. The food is distributed to you, your family, your neighbors. The waste from your kitchen scraps, lawns, and fallen leaves are returned to the farm to create more healthy compost. Where all of these activities create jobs and a healthier way of life. I'm sorry about that. I hope you'll agree that this is the kind of community in which we all could enjoy living. Next slide, please. Since its founding in 2007, Truly Living Well has worked to create regenerative models in Atlanta communities that have very little access to healthy, affordable produce. These communities included East Point, Old Fourth Ward, and Atlanta's West Side. TLW is an education center for natural urban agriculture where we grow natural and organic food. We're connecting people to that food, and we're working to build equitable and sustainable food communities. Historically, our core programs have been growing natural and organic food, distributing food direct to consumers and through a CSA program, and teaching adults and youth to grow food and engage them in innovative things like agroforestry, aquaponics, and community composting. All of these things that are really benefiting the environment in which we live. In 2016, we consolidated our efforts to Collegetown Farm. It's a 7-acre site located in the Ashview Heights community on West Side. We own 3.5 acres of the land, and we are leasing the hillside. You'll switch to the next slide. We're leasing the hillside that you see there in that picture. The farm incorporates over 85 raised beds, over 100 fruit trees, a greenhouse, aquaponics lab, a grow house, and the community compost lab is at the center of our operations. The basic process of composting, as many of you know, is ensuring sufficient moisture, air, and heat for soil microbes to feast on organic matter. The result of all of this is carbon sequestration as well as the production of valuable fertilizer. Right now, we're collecting over 120 tons of natural waste from people in our community, our grocers, restaurants, residents, and institutions like Sweet Auburn Market in downtown Atlanta. Our local landscapers are bringing in wood chips and leaves and lawns for the farm, and everything on our farm, all the natural waste from the farm is being incorporated into the compost system. Next slide, please. This compost lab was birthed at a compost design table a few years ago. It was convened by Full Well Alliance. Funding from the EPA Regional 4 allowed TLW, Food Well Alliance, Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and Southface Institute to partner together to take this process from construction to implementation and to expansion. The compost lab fuels our regenerative model in which this compost that we are creating feeds healthy plants without any use of harmful chemicals. We harvest the food that's grown there, distributed to the community. The community is returning their natural waste to the farm. The natural waste is feeding the compost system, and this rich compost provides a revenue stream for Truly Living Well as it helps to provide rich soil to other growers. COVID did impact the development of the project as well as our other operations. However, with strong partnerships, we've been able to recover. We're now preparing for the permitting process on the lab that you're seeing here. The lab has created 2 new jobs in our community. It's fueled 2 other enterprises for compost haulers. And we engage anywhere from 7 to 8 local tree companies and landscapers on a regular basis who bring their materials to us. Last slide, please. This final slide demonstrates one of the most important impact areas for us. We believe that we're teaching this regenerative way of living that is in harmony with the land, with the community, and it supports a hyper-local economy to our children. Not only are they our future, they are our investment right now. We're partnering with M. Agnes Jones Elementary, Booker T. Washington High School, and Westminster schools, where we're reaching about 2,000 children with our circle of influence. In closing, I want to leave you with this quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only way that ever has. And I wanted to mention that we've been blessed to have strong partners in our community who enable us to do all of this. And I hope that you will take a closer look at our program. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've been inspired by this story. Bill?
Thank you, Carol. And folks, if you have any questions for the panelists, please put them in the chat now or as you're listening. We can collect them and respond and engage later on. All right, introducing Nick Deffley. Nick serves as director of the City of Savannah's Office of Sustainability, working to promote a healthy, equitable, and economically vibrant community for Savannah's current and future residents. The office works closely with internal city operations as well as with local, regional, and national partners, focused on the intersection of sustainability, resilience, human health, and social equity. Nick has a bachelor's degree in environmental studies, political science and communications, and a master's in public policy and organizational effectiveness. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. And I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be here and be a part of this great conversation with all these amazing projects and people and thinkers. So if we could move on to the first slide. Thank you. So this project has been and continues to be an incredibly rewarding project for the city of Savannah and for myself and for the participants in it. There are so many cool components that I really could dive into, but I'm just going to do a very high level overview to give a sense of some of the different components of the project and its broader intent. So in 2018, the city of Savannah was awarded a grant through the Condita Fund and the Southeast Sustainable Communities Fund to launch a pilot program that paired workforce development with real tangible solutions to help vulnerable, low-income neighborhoods reduce their flood risk. So we called it Green Infrastructure to Green Jobs, and it had four main objectives. One was just growing our urban forest, and then enhancing workforce skills, engaging community residents and the youth around the importance of trees and the value of trees and ecosystem care, and then promoting local green infrastructure practices. Next slide, please. So the conditions we were trying to address with this grant were, one, we know that Savannah, it's a low-lying coastal region. The impacts of increased and larger flood events is definitely a big component. 70% of our major flood events in Savannah have occurred since 2015. We have had and experienced a steady decline of our tree canopy and urban forest in Savannah due to development and increased storm events. We also have over 350 vacant flood-prone FEMA properties. Those were properties that were repetitively flooded residential properties that were then bought out by FEMA and then deeded over to the city to maintain, kind of in perpetuity with no structures on them. And then finally, we also knew that we have a knowledge and skills gap in our rising workforce about tree care and arboriculture, which, for a city known for its tree canopy and its trees, we need to make sure that we have a community that's able to take care and manage that. Next slide, please. So by fits and starts, right? A little bit as Bill mentioned, working with the community, kind of figuring out the path. We thought we had an idea of what this project was going to be, and it continued to kind of evolve and change as we gathered partners and we talked to the residents. But we did finally move forward with this, and that is the development of 3 urban tree nurseries on vacant, undeveloped city property, located all of those located in kind of lower income neighborhoods. And we planted on those properties over 550 saplings of native tree species, including water and saltwater tolerant trees, as well as some fruit trees. We planted them all in 15-gallon pots with drip irrigation systems tied into the city water system. We also, with that, developed a paid landscape apprentice program, workforce training program, started with 19 apprentices, and these were residents really of the neighborhoods surrounding these tree nurseries that we recruited through a workforce training program nearby. And they helped build out these sites. We also worked with over 300 kids from 10 Title I schools, elementary and middle schools, from around these tree nurseries to help paint many of the tree pots that we planted these trees in, to help liven up the nurseries and give them a sense of connection to the community. So the intent of all of this is that, and these tree nurseries, is as the trees mature, we will permanently plant these trees on the FEMA properties that I mentioned before, in tree lawns, and in low-lying private properties, because we know a lot of our tree canopy is missing in our private property, almost more than it is in public property. And it's all to increase that natural stormwater absorption capacity, help minimize flooding impacts over time, and increase our overall tree canopy. All right, next slide, please. So I'm going to fly through a few picture slides just to give a visual. I gave you the background. Here are some of the pictures of this work. So this first one, we had 19 apprentices, ages 18 to 55, got 32 hours just of classroom training with our UGA partners, the Extension Office and Urban Agriculture. Next slide, please. They were learning Latin and genus species and all sorts of great things in this work. Then we went out and did some sample work and just kind of getting folks out there. A little humor shot on the left here, watching her thumb. But over 300 hours per person of boots on the ground, kind of real training on irrigation system, planting trees, tree care, and paid at $13 an hour. Next slide, please. So when we started building out these 3 urban tree nursery sites, these were sites that needed some TLC, they needed some care. We worked with many different partners to kind of help give the training on irrigation systems and design, and building those out and trenching and setting up the tree nurseries. Next slide. And continuing, so once we got those sites ready, then it was time to start planting all of these trees. And again, the intent is buy these trees at a very affordable, low price, raise them for a few years, and then have them at a size and a level that are worth planting all throughout the city permanently. Just a great time working through this. Next slide, please. I mentioned the kids earlier. This is just a picture. A great nonprofit here in town, Loop It Up Savannah, works with arts and kids in Title I schools. So kids from these communities around the tree nurseries, again, involving as much of the community as possible to help guide the project. They designed their own designs for these pots and then transposed them onto the pots just to give these tree nurseries more of a fun community feel and a sense of connection. Next slide, please. So here's a few shots of some of the tree nurseries and some of the folks and the apprentices that were just really great to work with and continue to remain with us as we move through this project. Next slide, please. And of course, a lot of recognition. I don't know if you can see it on the slide on the left, but you know, the ribbon cuttings and the celebrations just to recognize the importance of the trees, teaching the kids about the trees and the value of them. All these kids have t-shirts from Dr. Seuss quote, "We speak for the trees," from the Lorax, and recognizing some of the apprentices through the council. This was just huge for them and their families and their communities, and we are still all very tight-knit. Next slide, please. So we had, just as the previous speaker mentioned, great partners. This was nothing that we could have done by ourselves, and I think regenerative work happens not just with one entity, but with many partners, and it really made the project sing. That's the UGA Marine Extension, Georgia Sea Grant, Urban Agriculture, our local Victory Gardens, which is a landscape company here, the Savannah Tree Foundation, the WorkSource program, Loop It Up Savannah. So ultimately a very great project. And now just actually next week, we are permanently planting some of our first trees off these nurseries and into FEMA lots and some of our tree lawns. So a really great, gratifying experience. It takes time to see the benefits of it, but so many of the folks that apprenticed with us, finding longer lasting, more meaningful employment that has better economic mobility to it, and real connection of these nurseries and of these trees to the community members who live around them. And with that, I will finish up.
Thank you, Nick. Beautiful. All right, Heather. Let me introduce Heather. Hi. Heather was hired as Athens Land Trust's first full-time employee in 2003 after graduating from the University of Georgia with a joint Master's of Historic Preservation and Juris Doctorate. As executive director, she works with a diverse range of stakeholders to further Athens Land Trust's mission and impact, which has grown significantly during her tenure. The organization has grown from 3 employees to 25, and the annual operating budget has grown from $60,000 to over $2 million. Athens Land Trust has created 63 affordable single-family homes, 110 units of affordable rental housing, a network of community gardens, an urban farm and farmers market, and protected over 19,000 acres of land across Georgia. Welcome, Heather.
Thanks for having me. So I guess now hearing the other presentations, mine's a little different in the sense that it's not so much a project as it's kind of the history of our organization and how we've grown and tried to adapt as we've grown. I think I have some photos. I think there we go. So you'll see just from our mission statement alone, we are not an organization that believes in sound bites or simple solutions, or there's just, generally speaking, no easy answer, right? And so that's where we are. You hear land trust, and I think probably many of you think about a typical conservation land trust that does land protection, and we do have that function and that capability. Like you said, over 19,000 acres protected around the state. But our organization was founded not just as a conservation land trust, but we were also founded as a community land trust, which for those of you who don't know the history of community land trusts, it's definitely worth looking into and understanding. It was started in South Georgia in the 1960s as a way to basically, mostly for Black farmers, to have a means of controlling land so that they had the right to vote how they wanted to vote. And then thinking about how you use land collectively to help the whole community. So the founding story is really the intent for the founders was to start a conservation land trust. And it was around a conservation subdivision that they were developing, that they were going to live in. And they realized as they started laying out the development that the more land they protected for trails and open space and community gardens, then the fewer lots there were to divide the infrastructure cost amongst, which meant that the lots were getting more expensive the more land they protected. So inherently there's a tension, right, between the development, and what it was causing was people to be priced out of the development. And Nancy, one of our founders, her car broke down in Atlanta on the way to the zoo, and someone gave her a ride to a land trust office to use the phone. And the woman, Nancy, said, "Oh, I'm starting a land trust." And the woman said, "I bet you're not starting a real land trust." Nancy said, "Well, what does that mean?" And she said, "Well, this land trust allowed me to live in Atlanta and own my own home." And so when she got to the office, she started looking at their plans and talking to the executive director. And I think it opened her eyes to, another tool that could be used for responsible land stewardship and land management to create better community. And so that's how we were founded. And then one of the reasons I mentioned looking into community land trust, there was so much thought put into the structure from the beginning. And the best practice for land trusts, for community land trust, is that at least a third of your board are made up of low-income community members. So right off the bat, the idea is that those being impacted by the work are sitting in decision-making seats. And because that's been our structure, we've been guided through conversations that I think a lot of organizations wouldn't otherwise have to meet community needs as they come up. And so, the work was fairly siloed, very different groups of people when you're protecting land and you're providing affordable housing. And at some point, a board member asked about us developing a community garden on a vacant lot where there was drug activity in her neighborhood. And so we did that. And then that evolved into a community agriculture program, which is a way to bring access to green space and clean air and clean water into in-town neighborhoods. So we also have protected land in in-town neighborhoods and low-income neighborhoods. Over time, the things that we do Earthcraft certified. All of our houses are Earthcraft certified. We believe in sustainability. We're using sustainable agriculture practices as we're growing. But I think the longer I was in this role and the more, we're developing houses, we're developing units, we're protecting land. But where's the real long-term change happening? I feel like we could provide as many houses as possible, but we're not really changing the dynamic of what's going on. And so anyway, I think we started trying to think about community development from a broader perspective, which meant actually really truly working with the community to identify the things that need to change so that it's not just the units, but there's a way for this to really solve some of the issues that are in place that are causing all these things to be needed in the first place. And through this process, more and more charrettes, more and more community meetings, more and more input sessions. And as you keep listening to what people are telling you, you create programming around the things that are being identified. And so one program, just as an example, we were in this process of this. Is there going to be a giant community redevelopment project for one of the neighborhoods that we work closely with? And we started working with residents to go on trips to learn from other communities and look at what they're doing. And you go to these communities where things have been completely wiped out and rebuilt in a very sustainable way, in a sense, very energy efficient, very walkable, all these, nice qualities. But the residents who were watching and looking said, well, where am I going to live if this happens in our neighborhood? Where am I going to go? Or no one's going to want my raggedy house next to this new development. And so that, you start to identify there are homeowners who need help maintaining their homes and updating their homes so that they can stay in their homes. And then we started going to the high schools and talking to the students and getting their input. And one of the highest ranking items was they needed access to jobs and job training so that they could get their first job. In a college town like Athens, a lot of those entry jobs are taken by college students, and it makes it hard for the high school kids to get experience. So we created a construction training program where the high school students are learning construction skills, and they're repairing the owner-occupied homes in their neighborhood as a training lab. Anyway, that's
Heather, just want to.
I know we're short on time. Yeah. But anyway, there's one of our programs, and then there's many other things we could talk about. But thank you.
Thanks, Heather. That's the great question. How do we actually implement long-term change? So hopefully we'll talk about that in the session, in the question and answer period. All right. Next, Ken LaRoe is our final panelist. He's a serial values-based bank entrepreneur. That's a mouthful. Having founded, operated as chairman and CEO, and successfully exiting 2 community banks in Central Florida. He started Florida Choice Bank in 1999 and First Green Bank in 2009. First Green Bank was the first bank in the United States with a stated environmental mission. Ken is currently starting a 3rd bank. Served on the international board of the Global Alliance for Banking on Values, an international NGO that promotes values-based banking, and is a lead AP. A lifetime resident of Eustis, Florida, he graduated from Florida State with a BS in management and from the University of Florida College of Law with a Juris Doctorate. Thank you, Ken. It's all yours.
Thank you very much, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here. My presentation is going to be different from everybody else's in that I have no PowerPoint, and I'll have to expose my vulnerabilities a little bit. I'm a a baby boomer dinosaur, and I don't know how to do PowerPoints. And we are in the middle of our capital raise for our new bank, Climate First Bank, and that is all consuming for pretty much everyone. So I didn't even have anybody to turn to do it. So what I hope it's at least entertaining, maybe a little bit illustrative or educational. My background is I started my first bank in '99, no pretense whatsoever to anything ESG or sustainable or regenerative. It was really more an exercise in what I had learned in business school and law school. And we sold that bank in 2006. Got a tremendous return for the investors. So my investors thought I had the Midas touch, and they were very willing to jump in on the next round. And what had happened was my wife and I bought a little mini motorhome. We circumnavigated the country and had an absolutely amazing trip that I'd recommend every American get to do. And just before I left, my brother gave me the book, Let My People Go Surfing. It's the autobiography of Yvon Chouinard, who, as you know, founded Patagonia Clothing. And I read the book on the trip, and then the light bulb went off, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. I've got to do something that gives back and doesn't just make a bunch of people a bunch of money. So my best friend came up with the name First Green Bank. My wife designed the logo at our dining room table, and that was the launch of First Green Bank. We filed our application in, I think, January of 2008, and it drug and drug and drug, and then the world blew up. Washington Mutual failed, all the investment banks started failing, and the regulators just started tightening up on new bank charters, would not grant them. And we honestly thought we would never get our charter. And then on December 22nd, 2008, we were granted the last charter granted in the state of Florida for 9 years. It was an amazing journey, and it was definitely a journey. It was a total learning journey for me. And I didn't really even know what it meant to be a values-based bank. I didn't know what all it encompassed. And the turning point was when we were asked to join the Global Alliance for Banking on Values. And we did so. And at the first meeting, I sat at a table in a breakout session with CEOs from around the world, and I was just blown away by the depth of the initiatives they were doing and the change they were making in the world, and just went back thinking, oh my God, I'm not worthy. I'm just this redneck kid from Eustis, Florida with this dinky little bank, and we're not making a big enough difference. So we just did a deep dive at that point into everything we could possibly impact, pretty much across the ESG spectrum. And then we started getting the shareholder pressure to sell. The bank was built on the traditional entrepreneurial bank model of you start it, you scale it, you sell it, investors get their return. It resulted in us selling the bank in 2018. It was a very, honestly, unfulfilling experience. It broke the hearts of all my coworkers, broke the hearts of the community, broke the hearts of the customers. And my wife and I got another little mini motorhome. We traveled cross country again, and I did a massive amount of soul searching. Kind of, what am I thinking? I'm thinking about doing this again. Do I have it in me? Am I capable? And then finally, my dear long-suffering wife, Dr. Cindy LaRode, said, look, you got to do this. You want to, you can do it. You're uniquely situated to do it. And my same best friend came up with the name Climate First Bank. Cindy designed the logo, and we filed the application in October. We received our charter approval on Monday, and we've crossed the threshold of the minimum capitalization of $17 million. So it's for sure the real deal. We're gonna open June 1. And I'm just really pleased to be part of what has to happen as a capitalist reformation. We need to shift from shareholder primacy, Milton Friedman's bankrupt notion. I used to think he was not an evil guy. Now I think maybe he might be an evil guy. And I'm a rabid capitalist and always have been, but I'm also a rabid environmentalist. And I think the two have to go hand in hand to create the greatest impact, especially in the capitalist democracy that is America. But I fully intend to do my part in shifting from the shareholder primacy model to the stakeholder primacy model. And then that begs the question, what can we do? What can we do as a bank? And finance is an amazingly powerful tool to effectuate change. And our slogan is changing finance to finance change. And it crosses every element of society. And I've been asked, well, what are you going to do to make a difference in the climate crisis? And it just tormented me when I was putting the business plan together. It's like, yeah, we're going to be paperless. Yeah, we're going to have LEED buildings like we did before. We're going to drive electric vehicles. At the end of the day, though, it's like big deal. That's just a flea on the back of an elephant. It just is not moving the needle on the climate crisis. But at that time, I was concurrently reading the book Drawdown, and the light bulb went off, and it was like, oh my God, this is it. This is the seminal resource for what can be done today to actually draw down atmospheric CO2 and reverse the crisis that we're in. And so I thought, well, I'll just go through there, figure out which of those initiatives a community bank can actually affect, build our programs and services around it, and just burn up shoe leather getting them out there. And the real beauty of that is it can be measured. We can determine what the scope 1, 2, 3 emissions are for everything we do. So that's what I actually built into the business plan, and that's what we're actually working on right now. But I do want to say that for any of you out there that are thinking about doing a values-based business, it is really, really hard. It's not something you just jump into without a ton of passion, because you're basically running two businesses at one time. You're running a for-profit and a nonprofit, and often the initiatives are competing or in conflict. But it's so worth it. It gets me up in the morning, keeps me up at night. All my people are energized. It's really a fantastic experience. And then lastly, and I'll close, is I think they will share my email address, which is ken@kenlaroe.com. Give me some help. Give me some ideas. Tell me what you want to see in the bank. I hope to be in the Atlanta market and out of the state of Florida shortly after we come out of the 3-year de novo period. With that, I'll close.
Super. I will be emailing you, Ken. So thank you for that.
All right, awesome. I was going to email you too, Bill.
Well, that's great. So can all the panelists appear so we can actually see your faces? Oh, sorry, Carol. Didn't mean to exclude you. You're still here, aren't you, Carol?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, we got a lot of questions. Some that we generated in advance, but a number from the audience. And let's see, I'm going to start with a general one for all the panelists. How does a regenerative economy intersect or relate with restorative economics and justice? Heather, I saw Heather's eyes go wide.
That's a softball to start with. I guess, I mean, I would take a stab that if we aren't doing these things differently, and like Ken was pointing out, you know, sitting in those tension points, then we're not getting to justice, because the way the systems have been set up, I think most of us can agree, have not been very just. So we have to look for new solutions, right? Is that the answer?
It's that. No, it's the answer. It's an answer for sure. Ken and Nick, Carol?
I definitely agree. As Heather mentioned, it's a necessity to look outside of the current systems and develop models that are going to work for everyone. And one of the things you said in your presentation, Bill, was really looking at the individual first and looking at systems that support individuals where they are and working immediately in your community. And then that community is able to begin to change the neighborhood, change, the city, change the world. And so that's one of the things that we've been working on. It's a very, very difficult process, but it's a necessary process.
I'm going to take a shot. Oh, George, did you want to say something? I see George just appeared. No? Okay. One of the things that we found in our practice, the question was, the intersection, you can't heal the environment without healing our relationships with each other. That's the bottom line. And then, okay, that's easily said. What we have found is that remember that one slide where I showed the larger system, if we can actually gauge all the stakeholders working for the potential health of this larger system, the place, the living organism we call our home, if we can actually work together on that, we start automatically addressing those barriers in social relationship while we're serving the environment as well. It sounds almost like a cop-out answer, but it is very powerful because these things are so intertwined that we can't separate them as problems. But if we can get everybody working towards something larger, the larger potential, these things begin, as Russell Akoff says, when you work on harmonization, which is what happens, or reconciling all these issues, problems actually dissolve. They actually disappear in service of something larger. And I know that sounds Pollyanna-ish, but we have seen multiple times that effect. Okay, I'm done with my little lecture.
I would just add to that. I do think for me, what I've found to really work is starting very, very locally, starting with building that one-to-one relationship with that first person and building out from there and watching the impact of that grow, all with the intent of building trust, doing, of course, no harm or no intended harm, but also continuing to check and monitor and get feedback loops that allow you to kind of evaluate it. Here are the steps we took. How has that impacted everyone within our sphere, or the things that we didn't necessarily foresee right off the bat, and continue to adjust and adapt.
All right, that's a really important. Ken, did you want to say something?
Well, just to your point of we can't heal the environment unless we heal our relationships, and that kind of goes back almost to the Milton Friedman thing. The markets aren't frictionless, and the invisible hand hasn't served society as it should. And back to, was Milton Friedman a monster? I don't know, but he sure has spawned generations of monsters, and we've got to start reversing that. And I think the millennial and Gen Z generational cohort will go a long way in doing that. But I guess I'm at the other end of the spectrum. I'm a glass half empty guy, so I'm always finding the negatives and everything. But it's certainly, hopefully the tide has turned.
Turning, we hope.
Turning.
So I'm going to pick up on where Nick was going there, this idea of continuation, right? Because if it's not continuing, it ain't regenerative. Mm-hmm. So how do you build in the momentum and purpose so these efforts sustain themselves? In other words, regenerate. So in other ways, how do we create a regenerative culture? So that's for all of you to pick up on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll say for our organization, every one of our pillars, community agriculture, housing, and conservation, we have youth programming in each area. And that's a big piece of it. And the programming, it's not really about the workforce development. It's about the civic engagement. It's about the using culturally appropriate curriculum to help place the systems and identify and be able to talk about what's not working and ways to identify where we want to go. And I think my hope is that over time, just even exposing everyone and giving everybody opportunities in some of these areas where people have been left out, that's a big piece of this, right? Is to get all of us, like you say, looking at that same goal where we're trying to go and making it relevant for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Nick, do you want to talk about that a little more specifically?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking again back to the urban tree nursery program, you know, I think a lot of the regenerative space is around, you know, we're not just providing some other member of our community with a thing, a widget. We are providing them with knowledge. We are providing, and we are learning from them as well. And it's very reciprocal. And I think both, everyone, all the partners and parties are taking something from that they can then replicate with others in their own circles and then continue to build that out. I mean, I'm very much a proponent of, you know, teaching someone else to fish, teaching someone else to not only take what we might have shared with them and that they learned from us and what we learned from them, but build upon it and adapt and make their own kinds of impacts. And we had countless apprentices that were learning the Latin and genus species of different, you know, vegetation out there, and then they were sharing that with maybe their kids or their friends, and they're seeing the world in a different way than they had just a few days before. And that then is carrying on, and that's giving, I think, birth to kind of new perspective, new thought that they get to share with others.
Lovely.
Well, if I could riff off of Heather and Nick on that one. So I don't know, I think kind of maybe part of the solution is that whole influence and educate thing. And then for us as a bank, it's digging into affecting the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. If we can get our vendors are easy because you're saying, well, I'm writing you a check for this product or service. I will not write that check to you unless you do X, Y, and Z. Customers are really tough, and I've been trying to do that for the last 10 years and certainly haven't got it perfected. Our internal operations, of course, are easy, except maybe as it relates to our coworkers, and that's a little more difficult. But we found that coworkers that don't share our passion for the values proposition usually self-select out, or we select them out because it just doesn't work. If someone is anathema to what we stand for, they're going to be irritated every staff meeting when I get into politics, and generally will quit. So that's another glass half empty thing. Good God,
Well, they're finding their right niche. I
gotta get right in my head here. Sorry.
Bill, I just wanted to add that I think it's very important that we start with valuing each individual in the process and recognizing that people are going to bring different ideas and different cultural norms to the table, and making sure that you know, there's no one size fits all. So as we develop these things, we're giving space for differences as well as standing true to our core values.
Mm-hmm. So all this noble talk, which I totally support, but I'm going to get down to, so here's an issue for you, Carol. Do you have any issues, concerns from the neighboring community near your compost facility about citing that operation there? So in other words, how do you embrace the larger community in some of these issues?
So we have not had any complaints as of yet. You know, we try to monitor the compost area so we don't have a smell that contributes to the community. But one of the things you have to realize, when we first moved in that community, we had houses right across the street that were $15,000, $25,000 because of the community. Because we placed a farm there, now those houses are selling for $315,000, you know, $225,000. So the community understands the value of what we have there. We also have been incorporating the community in everything from building up those beds, those 84 raised beds that I talked about. We had people in the community that built that. Right across the street is the school. So a lot of the families, the children are going to those schools. We're serving as their learning lab. So we're having to build and buy in. Now, I say all of that because we're doing these things. Yes, we have had some problems in that community, but we have been creating space to talk it out and really taking the time to get to know the community. One of my frustrations is that it feels like it is taking forever, but each and every year we're beginning to see where we're making progress. And so that's been my learning lesson with this. It really has been patience, but having that one-on-one connection, listening to them and incorporating their thoughts, their feelings, their concerns in this process, it is helping us move in the right direction.
Thank you. I want to just underline what you said, and maybe with a different slant, Carol. It does take forever. In fact, it needs to take forever. You know, this is not episodic, right? So how do we build in that continual relationship, not only building, but evolution, right? As we grow in our communities.
Can I just add to that? I think you're also going to lose some folks because it takes forever, and there's not, you know, there's kind of a lack of desire to stay with something for, you know, we live in a society that's still kind of hard to change that paradigm. And so thinking that it's not just these quick win, quick turnaround moments, and that this is a full shift and way of thinking differently that, yeah, can be frustratingly slow, but also worthwhile.
Yeah, you know, we experience this in the communities we're working with, is that people will engage for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and they've got other things to do, and then in a deeper way, in a less deep way, let's say. It's not that they're not interested, but they have life, right? And that means there's places for other people to step into. So it's a continual moving, evolving system. Nick, there's a question for you here, which is more specific about what you do to start a similar tree program in another area. And I'd suggest that we don't answer that now, but that we share our emails. I think all our emails are going to be made available, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Cool. Couple questions for Ken that are pretty rich. I'm trying to think which one. Well, here's a good one. I want to answer this myself. What's the most succinct, simple way for a capitalist to understand the value in a regenerative economy?
Cool. How much more money you'll make. I mean, isn't that what it's all about? I've got a very high percentage of my new shareholders in Climate First Bank are first-time shareholders in any of my endeavors, and that is extremely exciting. Now, whether we're about to send out a SurveyMonkey survey to try to dig deeper into what the motivations were, whether it's just strictly to do good, or there's an element of doing well in there, I don't know. But I've got quite a few Trumpers that also invested, and these are people that don't even believe in anthropogenic climate change, and so they're in it strictly for the money. And it is that whole element of I believe that we have to be extremely successful financially, or nobody will take us seriously.
Yeah, I want to support that. We're working with developers in the US now, well, actually around the world. But these developers, when they go into a community, they buy a property, but they do not propose a project. They actually work with the community for 1 to 2 years to understand them. And as a result, they have zero resistance because it's a combined, it's a stakeholder driven. The only thing that they qualify it with, and we do in our projects too, is the developer deserves a profit. Nature works on a profit. And without it, we don't have nature. And so these developers, and it sounds a little caustic, but they laugh all the way to the bank because they're avoiding so much cost. They're making so much more, and they're doing good, magnificent good on top of it. In fact, I just got off the phone with one of them this morning. They've been hired by a city they actually worked in because the city said, you know how to get zoning done in an appropriate way. We want you to help us design our comprehensive zoning plan. That's a developer, they called.
Wow.
So
Can
That's
I
pretty
ask
cool.
a question though about that? That's one thing
Sure.
that for Ken, because it seems like so often developers are so experienced in a certain type of development, a deal that they've managed to make work, that they just cookie cut and use over and over and over again because it works with the financing, it works with their investors. And so who are these magical people that are have access to, I guess, more flexible ways of doing projects?
We don't have many of them in Florida, that's for darn sure. It's just slash and burn, terrible garbage that they've always done. And we made the decision, we're going to have a very strong negative filter at Climate First Bank, which excludes the obvious, no dirty energy, which includes fracking and all that, no extractive industries, no porn, no guns, no for-profit prisons, but we're not going to do slash and burn development either. I've done plenty of it at my first bank, and it's just reprehensible to me at this point.
Yeah, you don't need to work. That's a lazy way of working, and and it's understandable, right? You want to stamp template out here. Here's the shopping mall template, right? Boom, boom, boom. But that's why we're destroying our society. And what we've seen is that communities want responsible development, and they will respect it and honor it. I have never had pushback with somebody saying the developer deserves a profit. Well, never is too strong a word, but very rarely. Let's see. We still have some time for another question or two. So I'm gonna keep with Ken, but I think we can actually roll it. All of us can respond. Ken, one of our viewers with a 20-year run in the derivatives investment space relates to the rabid capitalist moniker. As they pivot into the impact investment space, they would love to hear more lessons you've discovered on your stakeholder primacy journey.
Bill, I didn't hear the very first part of the first sentence. What was that?
One of our viewers with a 20-year run in the derivatives investment space relates to the rabid capitalist moniker. As they pivot into the impact investment space, they would love to hear more lessons you've discovered on your stakeholder primacy journey. Maybe that's too big.
Well, yeah, that's a really insightful question, and I hope I can hazard an insightful answer. But the main thing that I saw with First Green Bank was the. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Are y'all getting that?
No.
Wonder what happened. Okay, it sounds like it's working good now. Was that it's back to the profit thing. Once the community started realizing that we were for real and we weren't just greenwashing, it's just a compounding effect of more and more customers, more and more projects, in the classic response or the classic answer of you can do well by doing good. I think Patagonia is probably the best model of that in the country. Just no compromise, live to your principles, and you will make more money. Was that responsive to the question? I hope so.
Well, close enough, but we're close to our end of time here, and I want to give a space for Carol, Heather, and Nick to add any other dimensions or comments, maybe not even necessarily around these questions, but anything you feel may have been left unsaid, like a lot of, but. All right, time. Oh, Nick, you're hesitating.
Sorry. I think the one thing that I would add, and I think we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but recognizing again, Savannah is not unique, but communities around the country and around the world and the relative level of people living in poverty or just at or below the poverty line. And when we're thinking about regenerative work, that kind of statistic has to also be part of we have to include that, and the people who are living at or below the poverty line, or even above it. We have to include them. We have to include anyone who's in a frontline community, and make sure that we are all have a seat at the table as we're designing and thinking about a real regenerative economy, I believe.
Thanks. Thank you. One last question. What aspects of the regenerative framework resonates most with the panelists? Or another way of asking is, how has today's discussion evolved your thinking, if at all?
I can say that I didn't know what this concept was a couple of months ago. And so, you start reading online, and it was feeling fairly esoteric to me, and a little like, is this the way to talk about these tensions and complicated work? Is this the right? But actually, Bill, I credit your intro. It really helped center it in a way that felt healthy and meaningful. So anyway, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Bill, I have a couple comments. One was that LEED doesn't create a sustainable system, and the example of the grocery store was fantastic. Next one is watershed equals life shed. The next one is a 100-year plan, and I want to be the first bank in the country that does a 100-year plan. So we got to talk about that. And then lastly, we can't heal the environment unless we heal our relationship with each other. Thank you for all of that.
Great, thank you. Carol?
My takeaway today is oftentimes as a smaller nonprofit, you've got your head down and you're just doing the work. And this moment gave me an opportunity to look up and see that this work is important to the big scheme of things. And so just hearing from all of you and what you're doing around the country, it's been encouragement for me, and just daily recommitting to doing the work. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Carol. Sorry we couldn't see you. All right. Thank you all. I think, Catherine, we're going to turn it over to you.
Hey, guys. All right. Well, if y'all want to hop off camera. Great. So we will have our next SART May 7th, so save the date. You can check out any of our future events that are coming up on southbase.org. You can also find online trainings there as well on our learning platform. Next slide. Don't forget to email events@southbase.org if you would like to receive CEUs for attending SART in 2020 or 2021. And lastly, thanks everyone for coming to Southface SART today. We know that this event ran a little late, but we'd hope for you to hop over to Zoom and join us in conversation in breakout rooms. Click on the link in the chat box. Now, let me send that. You should be able to see that chat box link. You may need to end your participation and go to webinar before you make your way over to Zoom. So I recommend copying that link or finding it in the email that I sent this morning. So make sure that you're ready to discuss the topics and have your camera and microphone on. So I will see you over there. Thanks, guys.